Test, test, test. All right, folks, we're going to get started in the next 30 to 60 seconds or so. On this call, we already have over 142 people listening into this webinar training. So I am very energized, very happy, and also the fact that y'all are on this call, it's going to be very, very good training material, and I'm going to cover a lot of things. So go ahead and grab a pen and paper, and while you do that, let me go ahead and read this off to you. This particular quote. It's not how fast or smart you are, but your ability to adapt that determines whether you survive. And the irony of entrepreneurial success is that the very behaviors and habit patterns that led to success at one stage of growth can contribute to failure at the next stage. I'll say it once again. It's not how fast or smart you are, but your ability to adapt that determines whether you survive. And the irony of entrepreneurial success is that the very behaviors and the habit patterns that led to success at one stage of growth can contribute to failure at the next stage. And this is what this webinar is all about. So we are going to get started. So let's go ahead and get into this presentation. Now, what this presentation is all about is the big damn secret to why the good old boys are destroying the real estate market once again, and what you can do about it. Now, a little housekeeping before we get started. A little sound check. I know we just got started, but if you can hear me loud and clear, please, please, please put yes in the comment box. I will love to make sure that you guys can hear me. So put yes in the comment box right now. I see folks that are putting it in. So if you have already, appreciate it. Thank you so much for putting in the word yes. And feel free to chime in at any time. And also, turn off all distractions. So turn off your email, your cell phone, your Facebook, your TV, your iPad, whatever you have out. Turn it off because we're going to cover a lot of things, and I want to make sure that you get all the information because there is not going to be a replay for this, most likely. So this is going to be a one-shot, one webinar, and it's done. So make sure that you take notes. And at the end, we're going to take questions, but keep in mind that this is going to be a very long webinar training, and I want to make sure that you get every single information on this. So that's the little housekeeping here. Now, here's a quick disclaimer. What my attorney said that I must include on this particular presentation. Capital Redevelopment Group LLC and Jeff Koga is not a United States securities dealer, broker, or U.S. investment advisor. This is not a solicitation to purchase any securities of any kind. This material is strictly for educational purposes, and by watching this webinar, you assume all liability. And so any actions you take from this particular webinar, you are assuming all liability, and that's my quick disclaimer that I have to go ahead and throw out. Now, what we'll cover today, this webinar is broken down into two parts. Now, the first part, we're going to cover what Google is telling us. Now, why Google? Well, Google is one of the most powerful search engine all across the globe, and Google has been telling us something when it comes to the real estate market. I'm going to go ahead and break down to you what it's telling us as real estate investors and why it's going to impact your business. And then from there, what I'm going to cover is the two components required to be a successful real estate investor or to become successful in investing in real estate. And then from there, I'm going to cover the changing of the cards and the special forces that are marginalizing your real estate business. And these forces that are affecting or will affect your business is going to dramatically impact how you do your business in the next 12 to 24 months. So stay tuned for that. And on top of that, I'm going to cover two strategy case studies on how we are carving out a niche and how we can work together. Because of these special forces that are entering into our market, I want to make sure that I can show you real life case studies that's going on now that has impacted our business and what we're doing to capitalize in this changing market. And on top of that, we'll explain to you on how we can work together. So that's part one of this particular webinar presentation. And part two of this webinar presentation will cover why you'll need to become more flexible as investors and operators to continue to grow your business. And we're also going to cover ways to structure your deals to stay competitive in this changing market, meaning how you structure your deals and how you present it to your investor or capital investors, and why you need to stay competitive. And if you're listening to this and you have capital on the sideline at this moment and you have been thinking about investing in real estate as a passive investor, or you've been thinking of getting involved as an investor operator, meaning that you want to do the daily operation of the flipping business, pay very close attention to this segment because it is going to dramatically impact your business. And there are ways that you can go ahead and make an obnoxious type of return, but also at the same time, you need to make sure that you know how to structure it correctly. So stay tuned for that. And also, once again, we'll cover in this section strategy case studies on how we're raising capital and also how you can get involved if you like what you see and what we're telling you. And also at the end of the webinar, we're going to take live questions and answers. So please stay tuned for that. And if during the course of the webinar you have any questions, feel free to type it in the comment box. So that way at the end of the webinar, we can go ahead and answer all of those questions. And so that way we can get them all answered. So make sure as we're going through the slides, if you have any questions whatsoever, make sure that you put it in the comment box because I would love to hear from you and I will love to go ahead and answer all your questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, who is Capital Redevelopment Group? I hope you guys know who you are, but if you don't know, we're a private residential and commercial investing firm, and our investment strategies focus on opportunities to acquire or invest in mispriced assets, primarily caused by the market dislocation and distress situation. We target what we consider a niche space within the market, identifying investments considered too small by a large institutional money manager and too large for individual investors. And our current focus is to capitalize on today's small window of opportunity by acquiring deeply discounted residential assets and fractured residential developments. Folks, from the downturn of this real estate market in 2008, it has now been almost 4 to 5 years since that downturn, and it is very, very crucial for you to pay real close attention because there is a small window of opportunity, as I just stated, and focus is what is going to lead you to success. And this webinar is all about focus. So that's who we are, Capital Redevelopment Group. And this is myself, Jeff Koga. Nice to meet you. I hope you know who I am. If not, then here's a quick overview. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Capital Redevelopment Group. I'm a real estate social media junkie, trainer, author, creator of Flippinese TV, and co-host of iTunes' hottest podcast, Real Estate Strategy Lab, that we just launched, which is going very, very great. So if you haven't seen Flippinese TV, as seen on YouTube Tuesday, feel free to look for our show there, and also on iTunes, look for Real Estate Strategy Lab, where we cover a lot of the things that we do within our business and within our organization of Capital Redevelopment Group. And I actually started investing back in 2004, and as I like to call it, I am on my second rodeo, and I've done things from wholesale, rehab, ground up, buy and hold notes, and development deals, and I've been involved on those types of deals in the form of principal, or in terms of co-wholesaling, or in terms of just marketing aspect of those particular deals. So that's myself, Jeff Koga, and make sure you connect with me in all the social media outlets because I would love to hear from y'all. Now, let's go ahead and get into the actual presentation, right? Now, investor operators, right, folks that are doing the business or looking to get involved, or that's even out there, maybe if you're lending capital, right, have you noticed that there's a lack of inventory, right, meaning that deals are harder to come by, right, not just marginal deals, right, not just single base hits, but those grand slam deals that you used to be able to get back in 08, even 09, and so forth. Those, in my opinion, has gone away, right? And on top of that, doesn't it feel like there's some type of increased competition that's going on? And And on top of that, just recently, if you can see on the screen here, is I created a video several months ago actually explaining my thoughts on what's going on with the Los Angeles real estate market. Now, if you're listening to this and you're in different parts of the country, it may not apply to you, but it may also. And I made this particular video and I called it the nest egg house flippers versus professional house flippers, and we have tremendous amount of views on that. People love it. So if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. Not now, but later on in this presentation. After the presentation, I mean, watch the video. But during that time when I made the video, I started noticing a trend. And when it comes to trends, I'm in a sense, a very analytical, geeky guy who likes to look for trends. And one of the trends that I focus on is I use something called Google Trends. And Google Trends allows me to understand the herd thinking. And understanding the herd thinking is going to allow you to, in my opinion, to make more money. Why? Because when people are zigging, you want to be zagging, right? So what is Google Trends? Well, here it is. Google Trends from Wikipedia says is a public facility of Google Inc. based on Google search that is often particular search terms is entered relative to total search volume. So I'll say it again. Google Trends shows how often a particular search term is entered relative to the total search volume. So this particular tool was brought to my attention several years ago by my mentors, my business coaches, and so forth. And I've used this to try to understand the herd thinking. Now, how cool will it be if you can go to Google Trends and see who is actually interested in real estate investing, right? Because my assumption was competition is heating up. So if competition is heating up, then maybe the terms such as real estate investing would be increasing in terms of the Google searches, right? That was my assumption. Now, again, right? Lack of inventory, increased competition, right? So I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and verify this with Google Trends. Now, here's an image of Google Trends, and when I put in, that kind of shocked me. Now, this is a 4-year trends from 2004 to 2012, and as you can clearly see from the trend from 04, even 05, the trend has been drastically coming down, and then after the market crash, where you can see the letter C, you can see that it has just flattened out. It has flatlined. So meaning that we presume that there's higher amount of competition, yet the general herd has not been searching the term real estate investing for a very long time. So how can that be, right? How can it be that these offers on the multiple listing service, the MLS, has, 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20, 30 offers on them when the trends of the general herd of real estate investing has been coming down year after year since the crash? Right? Now, that leads me to believe the next term that I have to search for is the Google Trends interest for wholesaling. Now, if you don't know what wholesaling is all about, I'll go ahead and briefly explain it, but I'll go into details later on in this presentation. But wholesaling is essentially getting a contract, making an offer on a property, getting a contract, and getting equitable interest in a particular contract, and then assigning that contract or selling your contractual rights to a bona fide end buyer who's going to do essentially the flip. And what you're doing is flipping your contractual rights over to from what you have it under contract for and what you're reselling it for, and that little difference is essentially your profit. But the point of the matter is this, is that on Google Trends, the interest for wholesaling has been flat, right? But as you can see in 2012, it has spiked back into all the way from the highs of 2008 and actually has surpassed 2008 in terms of what wholesaling real estate is. So is it any wonder? Is it even a question on why some offers on the multiple listing service, the MLS, have multiple offers? Because they're receiving most likely offers from non-bona fide house flippers, meaning they're getting offers from wholesalers. So is that the reason why competition is heating up, or it feels as though competition is heating up? Now, that's what I thought. But as I will explain in this presentation, as I dug deeper in market research, I was absolutely dead wrong. Now, there's really two secrets, in my opinion, when it comes to running a real estate investment company, or to be very successful in real estate investing. And it all has to do with, one, getting deals, right? You gotta have deals, right? Like in any business, to be successful, you gotta have a good product or a good service that you can sell. So in real estate investing, in my opinion, you gotta have deals. And then with deals comes the capital, right? You have to either have your own cold hard capital, or capital from other investors that you're going to give them a return on, or you're going to leverage institutional funds such as regular bank financing, or you're using things like hard money lending, which we'll cover at the later on in this presentation on the trends of what's going on with the capital side. But those are the two secrets, really not secrets at all, right, in my opinion, but the two components or the two ingredients that you would need to have a successful business. And you need to have abundance of those two to have a successful but also a growing business. So this first part of this webinar, we're going to definitely cover the deals, and also we're going to cover the systems within the deals and what we do within our organization and how you can implement it in your business, and how you can get involved in our system also. Now, let me go ahead and explain to you, okay, on something that's been going on. And there is a big change ahead that's happening, and what I like to call changing of the cards. And before I go into this change that's happening right now, I need to ask you a serious question, okay? And it's kind of strange question also. So, pay very close attention to this, okay? And that particular question has to do with the image that you just see, which is Walmart. Now, my question is, what did Walmart do to local businesses when they first rolled out, right? Walmart superstores. What did they do to local businesses? Local businesses as in mom and pop clothing store, hardware store, right? Even grocery store, convenience store that's on there, right? Even liquor store, right? Even gas station or tire stores. Those local businesses, what happened to them when Walmart came in? Well, here's an article from NewYorkDailyNews.com, and a study proves Walmart superstores kill off local small businesses. And it goes on in the article, says within 2 years of Walmart's opening its doors, 82 local stores went out of business. Now, some may argue to the fact that say, hey, you know what? Walmart is a big corporation, and, since they are a big corporation, they are adding value to the marketplace by bringing in more individuals that can go ahead and work in their Walmart superstore, right? Which I guess you can look at it that way. But also the other side is, what happened to the other 82 local small business owners? They went out of business in 2 years. Now, why am I even bringing Walmart up in a webinar presentation that has to do with real estate, right? Well, there's a logical explanation to this. And I'm going to ask you another strange question to you, okay? What if a giant like Walmart comes into your local real estate market? I'll say it again. What if a giant like Walmart comes into your local real estate market? What is that going to do to you? How is that going to impact your real estate business in the local market, right? And what's going to happen to investor operators? Now, if you're an investor operator, that means that you're doing the actual transactional flips, meaning that you're rehabbing, right? You may be wholesaling also, but you're predominantly rehabbing. You're the actual principals in the engine of real estate investing, and you're actually doing the transaction, the buying, fixing, and flipping, right? How's that going to impact you, right? A big corporation like that enters your local market, right? And on top of that, how is that going to impact if a big corporation like Walmart enters your local market and you're a capital investor, meaning that you're growing your nest egg, you're growing your capital because you want to retire, you want to go ahead and have the freedom to do what you please. So you have some capital on the sideline and you're entrusting the investor operators with that capital. But how is that going to impact you? Well, I'm going to explain to you how it's going to impact you, but also, first off, I'm going to explain how investor operators will you be out of business in 2 years if you're an investor operator. in 2 years, if you're a capital investor, are you going to not be able to lend out capital and see the returns that you're getting now in this real estate market? Well, let's find out. And you may actually say, right, hey, Jeff, but a giant like Walmart can't get into a single family real estate, right? Because they're so big, right? Big corporation has never, ever gone into the residential flip business. So it can't happen, you may say. But if you're thinking that, in my opinion, you're dead wrong. And here's what I mean. It's happening right this moment. Now, take a look here. Here's an article from Bloomberg, and it shows your headlines. Private equity has too much money to spend on homes. Folks, this is dated June 12, 2012. And on top of that, funds are planning to invest more than $6 billion to buy and rent foreclosed homes. That's $6 billion with a B, not M, okay? $6 billion to invest. And here's another article. Investors raise $8 billion for REOs. And this is on Housing Wire, folks. And it says in the article, large Wall Street investors rushing into the foreclosed market have raised between $6 billion and $8 billion with an intent to acquire between 40,000 and 80,000 foreclosed homes nationwide in the months ahead. And on top of that, the article goes on and it says institutional investors buying properties in bulk are crowding out smaller mom and pop firms, right? The investor operators that I just talked about earlier. And indeed, REO may be a fully institutional asset class within 18 to 24 months. If you do not understand the term institutional asset class, I will explain to you in a little bit what all that means. But mom and pop firms, are they going to be out of business? Just like when Walmart entered into certain local businesses, right? And the article goes on and says, it's a land grab unlike anything we ever seen. You're going to drive through parts of town and all of it will be institutionally owned. There's no upper limit, as they say. We can spend as much as we want, said Blackstone's Nick Pavionti. If we've determined we want that house, we're going to get it no matter what it takes. Now, what is the definition of what it takes? Does it mean that they're going to go ahead and offer more than what you mom and pop investors or folks that are looking to get into the business can offer? Is that what it means? Good question. Now, what do you do as investors, operators, when inventory dries up and the number of people out of work and everything in the I buy houses niche, your competition is growing at record numbers? You just saw Google Trends and the wholesaling aspect of this business is growing, meaning the interest is growing on that. But interest for real estate has gone down, and on top of that, there's a lack of inventory, right? And an increased competition. What are you going to do? And then ask yourself, how are you going to compete with the $8 billion fund? Again, how are you going to compete with an $8 billion fund? And that is the exact same question I asked myself earlier on this year in 2012 and asked and said, okay, how am I going to compete? And we'll get into later on how accidentally we found a way to capitalize on this shift. So stay tuned. But what is the actual cause, right? And the large institutional funds are buying up entire blocks of single-family homes in one fell swoop and renting them out. And this is something that has never been seen or heard of in the United States of America. It has never been done, right? But the question is, why is that, right? And on top of that, right, these funds that are buying up these properties, right, these hedge funds, they are not selling the properties. They are keeping them. So folks like us that are investor operators, we buy, fix, and flip, right? How can we compete with hedge funds that are not selling these properties? But if they're not selling, how are they making a profit? And if it hasn't hit your local market yet, consider yourself fortunate because it will soon. And this trend started off in much more in other areas such as Florida, Atlanta, Phoenix, and so forth, but it will hit your market. I am located in Los Angeles, and it has hit our market. And here's the big reason why, right? Do you remember this article from Housing Wire? They said they have $8 billion to go ahead and invest and buy and rent foreclosed homes. The answer is there. They have raised $8 billion not to buy, fix, and flip, but $8 billion to buy and rent foreclosed homes, meaning it's a completely different model than the flipping business. Right? And on top of that, right, you have folks, the Oracle as they call it, right? The number 2 richest man in the world, I believe Forbes said, Mr. Warren Buffett himself is talking investing in single family homes on CNBC. And it says, if I had a way of buying a couple of 100,000 single family homes, I would load up on them. And then he goes on and says, management is really the problem because they are one by one. They are not apartment houses, but I will load up on them. So you see someone like Warren Buffett, his status is saying, hey, you know what? I would personally load up on single family homes as rental, right? So where does this leave the average Joe, the average investor operators who's just getting into the game or flipping a house or 2 a month or have capital looking to make a return? So again, I'll ask again, how is this going to impact you in your business if you are currently flipping houses, or if you're looking to flip houses, or if you have some capital on the sideline that you're looking to invest and see a return? Folks, this administration has clearly stated that they're going to keep interest rates at historical lows to support the real estate market. So if that is the case, interest rates for your CDs and savings accounts are going to be drastically low. So if you're a capital investor looking, how can you go ahead and get these returns when you are competing not just with the other wholesalers, but also competing with an $8 billion funds? And this presentation, let me go ahead and break it down. Again, this is a very recent development. A lot of the bigger funds have yet to make their first large purchases. Now, we have seen it in our business. We have seen it in our local market. Okay? And if you haven't felt the effects of this yet, just sit tight because it's coming. And for you to be successful, in my opinion, you have to attack niches where the big boys can't compete and not fight the market forces. And I'll explain this in a bit. And now, what's the cause, right? Why is it that we have hedge funds now entering into the residential flip model? Well, take a look here, right? Here's a Newsmax article saying the next big thing, question mark. And it says foreclosed rental-backed security. And they go on and say rental-backed security may be the cause, and they say banks and real estate investors are working on a new type of security that is tied to the housing market, the Wall Street Journal reported, but instead of having the securities backed by mortgages, the new securities will be backed by rental payment of residents. Now, if you recall what has happened with this real estate bubble in the early 2000s, it was caused by the secondary market, right? Every other bank who issued a loan took those loans and sold it in the secondary market. And why were they able to sell it in the secondary market? And when I say secondary market, I mean Wall Street. Why were they able to do that? Why? Because the income from the mortgage payments were coming in, and these servicers were collecting these payments, and they were packaging them, bundling them, and then reselling it in the secondary market. And they were putting on all these crazy insurance like CDOs and so forth on there. But the point of the matter is they sold actual loans in Wall Street. Now they're stating right here on this article that the new instrument is going to replace the mortgage payments with rental income, and they're planning to sell it in Wall Street. Now here's another article by Market Watch, right? The Wall Street Journal, and it says, are rental-backed security the next big thing? And they say securitizing single family rental payments and then offering the securities for sale in much the same manner as other real estate backed securities. Just how I explained it, right? So these trends are coming. Wall Street has caught on, meaning that us mom and pop investors who are flipping homes have to find a way to go ahead and capitalize by competing with these $8 billion funds. So if the secrets to real estate investing is one, deals, and the second one is capital, and now because of these funds, we're saying that there's no longer any deals that we can buy. Why? Because these folks are buying these properties not to flip them, but to rent them out and cash flow them, meaning that they can go ahead and require lower yields than us house flippers. So how can you compete? Well, let me go ahead and show you a quick strategy case study on how we were able to go ahead and wholesale the unsellable home for top dollars. And it's by accident that we found this particular strategy. So pay very close attention to what exactly happened. Okay. Now, I'm going to explain this case study to you, but before I get in, let me explain from kind of the basic standpoint, because I want to cover what wholesaling is all about and what is the mechanics that work in today's market. So that way, at least you have some type of baseline foundation on what I'm going to explain to you. So if this is the first time you're hearing this, awesome, pay real close attention. If you already know what wholesaling is all about and the mechanics of what wholesaling is, since clearly Google Trends states that a lot of folks are interested in wholesaling. So if you already know what it's all about, or if you're just interested in what it, just pay real close attention, because I'm going to do a quick overview on what it's all about. Now, wholesaling, we have you as the investor operators. Now, you've got to market, right? Marketing is very important in any business because it's your bloodline to the deals. Now, when you market, what are you marketing for? You're marketing for houses, of course, right? And when you get a marketing pieces out, you're going to try to get a contract and a signature and making sure that what? You get a discount on that home. And once you get that property under contract, you're going to market now for what? As I like to call cash buyers, right? Folks that are willing to go ahead and pay slightly a little bit more than the contract price that you have it with the seller. And that difference is essentially your profit. Now, in this particular market, there are essentially only three ways that you can go ahead and close this out. The first way is a straight assignment, right? Just assign your contractor rights, meaning you're swapping buyers. So think in terms of you made an offer to buy and or assignees, and you're just instantaneously swapping it into a new co-investor LLC's name, and they close out the deal. Now, you can only do that typically on standard sales, right? REOs and short sales have been increasingly more difficult to do. So how can you get around that? Well, you have to double close, meaning that you'll have a standalone, two separate escrows open and two separate purchase contracts open, and you need to go ahead and double close on the transaction. Now, even with that, with the mechanics, why? Because, you know, certain escrow companies, certain title companies, and certain attorneys closing table may not allow you to double close. The third method that I use is called become the bank method. It is essentially we're taking your end cash buyer and turning them into a private investor, securing a deed of trust, a short form deed of trust, assignment of rent, and with a promissory note at the first closing, and then immediately right after the closing, we'll go ahead and deed the property over to the end cash buyer, essentially for the exchange of the reconveyance. So that way, one, we're not on hook for the loan, and two, so that way we can go ahead and get our assignment fee in exchange for the grant deed from us over to the end cash buyer. So that's essentially the three methods of closing when it comes to wholesaling in this environment, right? Now, in this particular case study, what I'm going to cover is, first off, the marketing side on how we acquired this particular contract. And here's a sample front of the postcard that we sent out. We send out a lot of mailers. We send out postcards, letters, and so forth to generate our leads. Why? Because I know a lot of investors out there focus is predominantly only on the multiple listing service, right? But I believe in the 80-20 rule that 80% of all investors are focused on the 20% of distressed sales, because you need to have a distressed sale for you to get a discount, in my opinion, right? Distress meaning the condition of the property, and distress of the sale because the seller needs to liquidate their property. Those two must come into play for you to get a discount as a real estate investor. So if you're on the multiple listing service, you know, hey, that's where everyone's fishing. Do I really want to fish there? I absolutely do not. So we do a lot of postcards that we send out, and here's an example of a postcard that we send out. This one, as you can see, has a 3.2% response rate on this postcard, and you can see kind of the funky design that we have. And also here's the back of the postcard that we have that we send out and so forth. Now, once we send out this particular postcard, our phone starts ringing, right? And when it starts ringing, we got to go out there to the property, get our contract, and get it under contract at the right price, right? And then from there, we're going to go ahead and, one, always send it out to our list. Remember, we're Capital Redevelopment Group. We're rehabbers ourselves, but for us investors or us, our organization, to know if we have a good deal or not, we always send it out to the list. Why? Because we want to run our numbers backwards to see what kind of premium we can receive for our wholesaling fee versus our rehab fee, and we try to run our numbers to see in the time frame which ROI is the best. So we always send it out to our cash buyers list. Now, this particular deal was brought to us by one of our new acquisition folks, right? And he got it under contract at a certain price. It was $165. In my opinion at that time, and the rest of my folks on my time thought that, oh my God, this is kind of grossly overpriced, which we believe because we know that particular pocket of Los Angeles. But it was a very subjective area, meaning in certain parts of Los Angeles, you cross a street and so forth, then the value will change. So it was very subjective. And on top of that, it was a duplex, right? Now, we could have held on to this as a cash flow purposes, but really that's not our model. So it was a duplex, 165, and we said, you know what, let's just send it out to our cash buyers list. And we have a lot of buy and hold folks on there also. And then we also have even majority of them are flippers, right? So we said, let's just send it out. Why? Because I wanted to, one, let my new acquisition guy find out, hey, you know what the opinions of other investors and, see the responses that they get. So we say, hey, you know what, maybe we'll get lucky and we'll get about $170,000 to a cash flow investor that's trying to make a yield on this duplex, and we'll be able to make a quick $5,000 in a few days and move on to the next one, right? Remember, this is a traditional sale, so it would have been in and out very quickly, right? So guess what we did? We'll go ahead and send out this flyer. Well, not this particular file, but here's a sample flyer that we send out to our list when it comes to our discounted property. So we give an overview on what it's all about, and we always try to give two strategies or our game plan, option one, option two. In this particular flyer, it says get in and get out, which is a quick flip, or highest and best use. And on top of that, we give instructions on how people can buy our property, and we even give pictures and videos, folks, so that way our end investor or cash investors and so forth who's looking to buy, fix, and flip, or buy, fix, and rent, at least they can get a good feel of the property prior to them driving out to the actual property themselves. So once we sent out that email with our flyer to our database of investors, we started getting responses. And take a look here. Here's a couple of responses that we got. Joe liked what we saw, or saw, but the price needs to be closer to 140 to 145 tops. Let me know if we have a deal. Okay, we have it under contract at 165. Not working. AJ, thanks for the heads up on this property. I already had my whole team inspect the property, and property needs about $20,000 to $25,000 of work, but I like it at the right price. The right price for the number to work is 135 to 140. If you can make it happen, we got a deal. Call me to make arrangements. So we have it at 165. This guy's saying 135, 140, right? Here's another one. Hey Jeff, voicemail was full again. I figured I'd reach out this way. The property on such and such street in LA, I can do about 145, 150. I can close in little as 5 day, all cash as always. By the way, I just emailed you on the property at 87th on Almond Avenue. Are these still available? Now, as you can see, these are three completely different investors that are giving me a range from 140 all the way up to 150. Now, obviously, clearly, we have a problem, right? Because we have it under contract for 165. So we have a delta difference of $20,000. And we have a very hyperactive list, meaning that we have tremendous amount of investors, and the way that we market, we know for a fact that we can gauge value very quickly because of our hyperactive list. So we were just like, okay, this looks like it is a dead deal, until we got a letter of intent from a hedge fund. And here's a copy of the letter of intent, and it actually came from a different wholesaler that we closely work with, because we work with many wholesalers locally here in Los Angeles that works with other buyers and so forth. So they sent this in, and as you can see here, Boom, they're willing to purchase it at 180,000. On top of that, they added $5,000 on the actual a fee for the other wholesalers. So they're making another 5,000. They're paying 180. Remember, we have it under contract at what? 165. And on top of that, they say they can close in 7 days. So here's how the numbers look like, right? Because we have our fee of $15,000 here, right? We have it at 165. Now our resale flip out price, okay, it was 230 because originally we thought this hedge fund is going to buy it to flip it. So we're just like, okay, let's run our numbers to see what kind of yield that they're going to get if it's all cash with no debt leverage. So when they do that, they're only getting a 10.7% yield on this, which if you are doing this as a house flipper and you're getting a 10.7% yield on that, and that's pre-tax dollars, you're not going to be able to survive or make a living off that if you're going to do that. So, and it's very, very risky because if something goes wrong, you know, you only have that margin of error. Right. So, and on top of that, I used 18,000 for repairs. Remember, the other investors said that it might take anywhere from 20 to 25,000. So, a little bit difference there. So, but hey, you know what? The hedge fund bought the property at 86 cents on the dollar. Remember, this is a duplex, so we know most likely they're going to cash flow. We made $15,000 in assignment fee, right? So no other investors were willing to buy this. They wanted to buy it at 140 to all the way to 150. We had it at contract at 165, right? And we sold it to the end buyer at 180. So there was a problem, huge problem with that, right? And on top of that, I really didn't want to go back to the actual seller. I didn't want to go back to the actual seller, right, and renegotiate a new price, lower price, right? So, but luckily enough, hey, you know what? The hedge funds bought it, and I was happy. Now, sorry, I'm having some issues with the slides here. The computer's moving on its own, so I apologize for that. Right? So that's awesome, right? Now we can just wholesale properties to hedge funds who will buy them much higher than us mom and pop investors, and we can make a living off of that. Sounds pretty simple enough, isn't it? Right? But that's wrong. This level of strategy will only work for a short time, and as more investors catches on, right? And you clearly saw it in the Google Trends in the beginning of this presentation. More wholesalers are entering into your market. So imagine if they catch on that they could just wholesale properties to hedge funds all day long. What are you going to do, right? So it's a very short strategy. And then on top of that, the big one, right, is this. What are you going to do when all the real estate agents understands this? Right? So your best friend realtor who brought you deals left and right for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or however long you've been doing this business, and they understand that, right? Well, you can say that, hey, you know what? They may have loyalty with you because you have done tremendous amount of business with them and you've made them profitable, right? But also at the same time, if these realtors have fiduciary responsibility to the seller, like imagine that individual on that particular property, right? Right? It has fiduciary responsibility. They get a listing off that. They're going to sell it to the hedge funds all day long. They're not going to accept your offer, Mr. and Mrs. Wholesaler, and you're not going to be able to make that $15,000 spread when the rest of the industry catches on, and they are catching on. Okay, so what are you going to do? Well, obviously you can go ahead and do that model, the wholesale model, with the hedge fund for a while, right? No big deal. You can still make money, right? But if that doesn't work, what can you do to go ahead and make deals or still be able to buy deals? Well, here's our strategy. Here's what we're doing. Why? Because we saw this trend happening and we adjusted our company and what we're doing about 18 months ago, and how we're buying houses closer to retail now and we're making more money now. And here's a case study. And here's the front of the picture of this particular project. It's Project Maple. And let me go ahead and give you kind of the link on Project Maple. I would highly recommend just to write it down right now. Do not go to the actual video and watch it now, since we're in the middle of this particular presentation. But write it down and watch it after the presentation, so that way you can get a good feel on the type of construction that we do, the type of work that we do. Now, here's the before picture of a Project Maple. And you can see it's, you know, kind of ugly, has a yellow on there, very, very outdated, right? One car garage, right? Here's the inside of it, right? Very ugly. Look at that carpet on there, right? Look at the the inside. You can even see the blue cabinets towards the back, which is actually the kitchen, and the dinky little dining area right now, right here. And here's that. It was a fake fireplace. That's not even a real fireplace. And here's the kitchen, right? This is how it looked like. This was an REO, and it's an ugly thing, right? Look at this, right? And there's the purple walls. Here's the bathroom, right? Look at these tiles. Very, very ugly, out of date, right? Right. And they already started demo on this picture. So in the back area, there was actually a illegal addition towards the back right here, but we've blown that out. And you can see the shed on the left. Here's the shed again. Here's the area that we blew out, the illegal addition. And more construction material. We have to blow that out inside the garage, right? And here's the actual project when it was completed. And as you can see, this is the front of the house, drastically different, right? And what we really, really like is on the front, I don't know if you see it or not, is that metal siding that we put in this right here. That was very cool. And actually, people loved it. So here's a picture of it. We put the red door on there, right? The white gravel, right? Makes the house really pop, aesthetically very pleasing to the eyes, right? So let's go inside, and you can see we have kind of the black trim that we do here in Los Angeles, right? Because we want to make our houses look a little bit different. We're trying to go with the minimalistic style, and you can see the living room and the dining area is tremendously bigger. Why? Because we opened up and rearranged the whole inside of the house. And there's the kitchen right there, right? Maple cabinets, right? So very good stuff. It says lights. And here's the bathroom, right? We got the tiles, and we got the pretty cool shower panels that actually has 8 jets right there that comes out with the shower handle, and then you have the on the top, right? All right, and you kind of see my hand right there while I'm taking a picture. And here's the cool little faucet that we put in, right? Here's the bedrooms. Right, here's the master bathroom, right? Here's the shower panel again, right? Pretty cool. Access to the back. And here's the back area. The area that we added the 500 square feet is this section right here in the back. So which is awesome. And again, I'll show you the cool steel metal that we put on the siding, so which made the house pop. Right, and here's the kind of the numbers on this particular property, right? So we actually bought this on March 28, 2012, right, for $273. And keep in mind, $273 at that time in this particular area, that was retail level. Literally, we were competing with end retail buyers that were trying to buy this property with a 203K loan. Now, if you don't know what a 203K loan is, it's a federally backed loan that is used for retail buyers that are going to buy the property, and you can throw money, basically covers for the rehab, construction, and so forth. Now, the point of the matter is we outbid them. Why? Because we're investors, so we finally got the deal, and we had to come up drastically. Now, we bought it, and we resold it on August 30, 2012 for $500,000. So, as you can see, that's a significant amount of juice that we have on there, right? In terms of what we bought it for, what we resold it for. And on top of that, we did an addition of 500 square feet, and we flip it out in 6 months, meaning we got all the permits, we went through all building and safety, and we flipped it out in 6 months. So when it comes to this changing market, for you to be successful, in my opinion, in this market, you have to find and carve out niches where this big institutional hedge funds cannot buy. And those areas are areas that are, one, in a retail level, that you have to buy at a retail level, but also at the same time, because they're buying at a retail level, but also at the same time, you have to do added plays, right? Meaning that you have to do additions to be able to generate the spread that is required, so that way you can still hit the returns that you need to hit to stay profitable, and then also so that way you can grow your real estate flip business. So the strategy is, when doing an addition, you need to get at least a 3-to-1 on your money, or that's what you're going to shoot for. And what I mean by 3-to-1 is meaning if the construction is $100 to $150 per square feet. Now I'm clumping that together, the cost. So depending on how you operate, if you're paying for all the material cost, or if you have your GC cover everything, or depending on where you're at in the country, the cost to make an addition is going to vary, but I'm just going to use $100 to $150 a square feet. Your ARV, or your flip out price per square feet, should be at least $300 to $500 square feet. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to justify the flip. And on top of that, you're going to take on other inherent risk by making those additions if you don't get at least 3 to 1. Hey, if you get 2 to 1 on your money, not a problem. Meaning that if you're going to add 500 square feet, it's going to cost you additional $50,000 on top of your regular flip. Then you better get at least in a higher equity position of $100,000. If that makes sense, okay? So that's a strategy. Write that down. Get at least 3 to 1 on your money from the cost of construction, so that way you can still hit the margins, right? And again, if you're going to do heavier constructions, you need to make sure that you can go ahead and structure the deals correctly, structure in a way that can be beneficial to you, so that way you don't have to take on the much more of an higher inherent risk. And on top of that, you're protecting your capital investors as well, which we're going to get into the second part of this particular webinar. But for deal's sake, for you to go ahead and stay competitive in this market, you're going to have to do either one, wholesale deals to these hedge funds, so that way you can still get a margin, or get the maximum amount of margin and make your money that way. Or two, if you're going to rehab, you're going to have to rehab and do heavier construction. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to stay competitive in this market, because the hedge funds are going to outbid you. Think Walmart entering into your local real estate market, right? If you own a dinky little tool store, let's just say, that sold shovels, Walmart can easily come in and undercut you with their prices, and you're going to be out of business. Same thing here, where these hedge funds with funds that I've even spoken to, these hedge funds, they only care about a yield of 8 to 10% yield. Now, you can't survive off that if you're going to flip, and you're going to make flipping as a business. Okay, you're not going to be able to survive off on 8 to 10% yield pre-tax dollars. So you need to either one, as I stated, wholesale or do heavier construction. And the way to do heavier construction, as I just mentioned here, is just exactly this. Now, on this particular deal that we just covered, right, the most interesting thing is this, is yes, hey, it's exciting stuff that we bought the property and flipped out an addition in 6 months. But the interesting part is this, is that if you can take a look here on the mortgage history, that we used private capital for the first of $242,500 that they lent on, and on top of that, we took out a second for $138,500 that paid for essentially the holding cost and the rehab, or the construction cost of this particular deal. And the second deed of trust, or what I like to call AKA the gap funding, right, came from a hedge fund. I'll say it again. It came from a hedge fund. Meaning, does this mean Wall Street movement is going to affect your private capital investors? In my opinion, yes, it is. And it's going to impact it dramatically. So as I stated on the second part of this webinar, I'm going to explain it so that way you can understand how the funding aspect, or the capital side, is going to be impacted by these Wall Street, and what you need to do to adjust how you can work with investor operators like ourselves if you have capital on the sideline and so forth. All right, so these are the 14 steps for a successful rehab, and I'm going to cover from the basics on these 14 steps, and in these 14 steps we're going to cover the actual phases of construction as well. So step one is meet with your contractor and define the job. So once you have a property that you would like to purchase or like to acquire because it is in the threshold of your return that you're looking to meet, go ahead and meet your contractor and define the job on what you want done. Is it a simple, what I like to call lipstick on want to rehab, get in and get out, carpet, paint stuff, or are you going to do some pretty heavy construction? And then from there, you got to define, step 2 is define the job and buy materials. The best way to go ahead and control the rehab is you should be buying the material. As you as the investor, as you progress and as you mature in your flipping business, you are going to find that to control the rehab construction aspect is you want to take over the material side. So if you have not done it yet, I would say that you should start immediately. If you are thinking about getting investing, I would say that, hey, you know what, you should definitely start with that in mind and hire contractors on strictly the labor portion, and you buy the materials. Because in our case with Capital Redevelopment Group, we do buy everything from the drywall to the screws and the wood for framing and so forth. So now once you define the actual project, and this is where your creativity is going to come into play also, because as I stated earlier in this presentation, as competition heats up and you're in a environment where the Wall Street hedge fund has entered into your business or entered into your local market area, you're going to have to go ahead and do heavy construction. And if you're going to do heavy construction, you want to make sure that you're controlling every aspect of the construction. On top of that, when you're defining the job, you're creativity to be able to see the layout on how you want to go ahead and reconstruct the internal walls of the house, so that way the layout is much more smoother. Or if you're adding square footage, you need to go ahead and bring in that creativity, so that way you can go ahead and figure out what's the best layout of the home. So once you figure that out, then you're going to start phase 1 or step 3 of the rehab process, which is the demolition, right? You need to go ahead and demo out all the old ugly stuff. And then step 4 of the rehab process is phase 2 of construction comes in, which is the roof, windows, and siding. And then step 5 is phase 3 of construction, where you need to do plumbing and the HVAC. Step 6 is phase 4 of construction, which is framing and the subfloors. Step 7 of the rehab is phase 5, or put up the sheetrock, the drywall, and so forth, right? As they say, mud, tape, orange peel, and paint. And step 8 is phase 6, which is the painting portion. And step 9 of the rehab is phase 7 of construction, which is installing a new kitchen and new bath. I would highly recommend that you actually have different subcontractors for installing the kitchen and the bath portion. And step 10 of a successful rehab and phase 8 of the construction is your punch-out list. And step 11 is phase 9 of your construction, which is the carpeting. Step 12, the successful rehab, is phase 10, which is cleanup and landscaping. Now, a rule of thumb on landscaping is you can definitely start the landscaping in phase 1 of the demolition, which means that when you clean it up, you can go ahead and install the actual sprinklers, so that way while you're going through phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, phase 6, phase 7, phase 8, phase 9 of your construction, if you already put the sprinklers in and you have the seeds in there, you should start to see grass grow, so that way you don't have to buy the expensive grass and so forth. Now, step 13 of the successful rehab and phase 11 of a construction site is you need to even start marketing. So by that time, phase 11 will start marketing and looking for the end retail buyer, and step 14, is phase 12 of the actual successful rehab, which is the final repairs that are required. And for us, for the final repairs, we'll go ahead and independently order our own home inspection report that we actually pay out of our pocket to making sure that everything is done correctly, so that way if there are some issues with certain plugs or certain things, then you will know that, hey, you know what, that portion was covered in the actual final inspection, and we can go ahead and give that home inspection report over to our contractors to get it fixed. So again, step 14 or phase 12 of construction side is get a property inspection report that you pay for, so that way you can go ahead and give that report to your contractor, because one, I guarantee you're probably going to find something that needs to be fixed on there, because we always do. So those are the 14 steps for successful rehab. Now, here are a couple of case studies or videos, a couple of case study projects that we have going on that has heavy construction. construction. And if you want to see some of our videos from previous projects, go ahead and go to the link that you see on the screen. And you can see, this particular project, we're adding 500 square feet in the back, as you can see here. It's being prepped, ready to actually pour concrete on. You can take a look here. The rebars are in, right? So here's another project that we have, right? And here's the back side of where we're adding the addition, right? Here it is, right? That's the little area that we're going to be adding, and you can see the backyard, and you can see the greenness. Remember what I just talked to you about the sprinkler? So that's a prime example that the grass has grown, right? So, and there it is, a better angle on the addition that we're doing. That's the whole master bedroom area that we're putting together. Here's another project, right? And this one's a pretty big addition that we're doing. We're adding almost 1,000 square feet on here. So you can see here, right? The framing is going up. All right, there it is. That's the big structure that we're adding in the back. And here's another one with heavy construction, right? This one, we built a brand new garage, as you can see on the screen here. They're building a brand new garage, and the framing's up. We even had to get a bobcat on that, right? So you can see the picture of that. This one, we actually had to jack up the whole house, meaning that we had to lift it up. Essentially, picture a jack that when you actually change your tires on your car, right? You put a jack under your car to lift it up. We had to do the same thing because why? Because we did a new foundation on this. So as you can see, there's the foundation. That's a better picture of it, where we actually poured new concrete and built a new foundation on the home. So there you have it. Those are some of the constructions that is required, I believe, to stay competitive in this market, to actually have a growing business. Otherwise, you are going to get marginalized by your competition, the $6 to $8 billion funds that are in your market, right? So that is the way to go ahead and get deals, right? Wholesale deals to hedge funds, or to be able to go ahead and do heavier construction. So that way the hedge funds are not going to go ahead and be able to buy those properties. So now let's talk about the second part, right? The capital aspect, right? Because you require two things to be very successful in a real estate investment business or your flipping business. You need to have deals, right? You need to have good enough deals that there's enough margin so that way you can make a profit. And on top of that, with deals comes capital. And when it comes to capital, it does not have to be your cold hard capital. Obviously, if you have your own cold hard capital and you're liquid, or you have a credit line, it's going to make your life much easier and your ability to be able to do this business much easier if you have like a home equity line of credit and so forth that you can tap into. But there are changes that are occurring at the micro and macro level when it comes to capital side and how it's going to impact your business as well. What I mean by that is same type of competition that is entering into our local market that's making our ability to be able to buy deals at a discount is coming down. Same thing is going to happen with your capital side. So if you have capital on the sideline and you're lending it out to investor operators that are doing the actual flips, you are going to have to adjust to the market change as well. And let me go ahead and explain that to you in a bit, right? So do you know what happened on March 27th of 2012? Something very important occurred on that day. Now, what was it? It's the American Jobs Act. And the House overwhelmingly approved the measure on Tuesday, March 27th of 2012. And this was a bipartisan measure and was backed by both parties, the left and right, and the White House, and passed 380 to 41 votes. Now, what is this Job Act? Now, if you want to go ahead and physically pull it up, go to www.getcrgnow.com/Job Act. So that way you can pull it up on your screen while I'm explaining this to you. So that way you can see how it's going to impact your business. Now, within the Jobs Act, right, how is it going to, what is the Jobs Act and why will it affect private investors and operator investors from making money? That's a question, right? A valid question. So pull it up on the Jobs Act. You'll be able to see. And in the Jobs Act, what we're actually looking for is something called HR 2930 and AKA crowdfunding. And that's the measure that's very important. So what is crowdfunding, right? Now, if you want to know what crowdfunding is all about, go to www.getcrgnow.com/crowdfunding. Now, in a nutshell, what crowdfunding is that it will allow anyone who's looking to raise capital to be able to raise capital openly in the public without going after accredited investors. Previously, for us investors, if we're going to raise capital in the form of PPM and so forth, private memorandums to raise capital for your investing business, to create a, let's just say, a fund to compete with a hedge fund, right? You need to go after accredited investors. Now, that's all going to change with crowdfunding, meaning that now you can pool anyone for capital raise, meaning that if they have 20,000, 10,000, 50,000, or even $10, you can go ahead and pool those funds for a particular project. And my gut tells me, okay, is that this in itself is going to enter into the real estate investing. And this is my bold statement. You heard it here. You heard it here first, okay? Is crowdfunding is most likely going to enter into the local mom and pop investing. Why? Because it's going to be that much more easier to pull from other investors a bunch of money together, and you don't have to worry about SEC violations and so forth on how you're raising capital. Now, later on this presentation, I'll go into some of the things that you need to worry about and how you can structure those deals. But as I stated, crowdfunding will affect the way you raise capital. Why? Because it's going to allow average Joes, average small business owners to be able to go ahead and raise capital at to the open public openly, meaning that you don't even have to have a quote-unquote relationship with the investors to be able to pitch a deal or pitch a investment opportunity. So that's all going to be changed. Now, what are some other things, right, that it's going to affect private investors? Here's one, okay, is which we've been focused on. It's called EB-5 visa. Now, if you don't know what an EB-5 visa, here's the actual Wikipedia definition of what EB-5 visa is. And EB-5 visa is like any other visa that you can get, meaning that you want to become a permanent resident of the United States of America. There's different visas that you can get. If you want to be a student to come here and get education, right, or education, then you'd have to get an F1 visa. If you're here to work, you get like a E1 or H visa, right? Now, this one is specifically to promote investors from foreign countries, foreign nationals, to be able to invest in U.S. soil. So what is EB-5 visa, right? This visa provides a method of obtaining a green card for foreign nationals who invest money in the United States. And also, to obtain the visa, individuals must invest $1 million or at least $500,000 in a targeted employment area, end quote, high unemployment or rural areas, creating or preserving at least 10 jobs for U.S. workers. So what does that mean? This means that the EB-5 visa can be used to go ahead and raise capital from foreign nationals, you know, to $1 million or at least $500,000, as long as you can create a job in what they call quote unquote targeted employment areas. There's certain obviously qualifications on that, and the government basically tells you what that target employment area is, and it has to do with the unemployment rate and what's going on. Because why? Because the government wants to promote job growth. So this is a way to promote job growth. Now you may say, okay, what does this all mean? Well, let me go ahead and explain it to you, okay? Take a look at these pictures, right? It's from the W in Hollywood. And you can see the amazing pictures, right? And this is an actual development that was created by a EB-5 visa. And here's a site, screenshot of the site. And it says sold out exclusively by the American Dream Fund, the W Hotel in Hollywood. So the actual W Hotel in Hollywood, where celebrities go and so forth, and people have amazing parties and so forth, and it's a fun place to be, was created by using the EB-5 visa. Right? And if you want to find out more about it, go to the www.adreamfund.com/investment_project.php, and you can go ahead and literally read up on this particular development. So if you're competing with these hedge funds, right, to buy properties for the deal side. Now, when it comes to capital and you have capital on the sideline to invest, you're also going to be competing with these types of government programs that are coming out to promote job growth, and you're competing with international investors, right? Now, let's take a look here. Here's an article from Asia Society, right? If you take a look here, and you can see on the headline, Chinese direct investment in California. And this article breaks down literally what the growth of Chinese foreign investors that have entered into California. And they talk about, and they say, Asian Society finds that California has attracted more Chinese investment deals than any other U.S. state and remains fifth in the nation in total investment value. And it also goes on to say Chinese investment in the state is growing at triple-digit levels and could reach $60 billion by 2020. So that means there are more money now from international investors coming in that you have to compete with as investor operators. Now, obviously, if you're an investor operator, meaning that means that you have more choices and options to turn to when it comes to finding the right capital to do your real estate investment deals, right? So then the question is, right, obviously you can go here, getcrgnow.com/Asia-Society-Executive Summary to actually read up on the executive summary that was created by Asia Society and that explains why there's that much growth and so forth. It's a very interesting article. I would highly recommend for you to read it as well. Now, why is that happening, right? Why is international investors coming? My opinion is this, is that the U.S. dollar has been declining in terms of purchasing power during the 20th century. And this is an actual graph that actually breaks this down. And as you can clearly see, since even the Great Depression, the value has been coming down. And obviously, previously during the Great Depression, it was considered the Great Contraction, as they say, right? That the funds that were in the economy contracted, meaning there was less capital. So that's why there were quote unquote bank runs and so forth. I can, that's for a whole other webinar explaining all that. But since then, the dollar has always been pegged by gold, meaning that it was on what they call a gold standard. So for every dollar that you had, it was considered to be, you can have an equivalent to a gold, right? Same thing as they call it the silver dollar, right? 1 ounce of gold and so forth, right? But things has changed since then, meaning that during the Vietnam War, this country depegged itself from the actual gold that it was backed by. It was done by Richard Dick Nixon at that time, and they unlinked it from the gold. Why? Because the country needed more liquidity, needed an ability to be able to print more money, as they say, so that way we can fund the wars and so forth. Now, obviously, after that, we went through a big stagflation era, right? Jimmy Carter era, where interest rates were in the high teens. So anyone that lived through that time will remember, right, that you're buying houses in double digits interest rates and so forth. Then we got the Gulf War, then we got the war on terrorism. But as you can clearly see, the dollar has been declining, meaning that foreign investors can buy more of U.S. stuff or U.S. investments because of the U.S. carry trade and the strength of the dollar declining. So understand all of this and what's going on, at least on the global scale, and what's happening with our currency, because it is going to impact you as a private investor who's looking to invest their capital. Because an investor operator who's doing the rehab flips and so forth, they have now options to tap into these money sources. So if they have options to tap into these money sources, your previous investor operator that you entrusted over the course of several years or several months or whatever it is to get you those returns that you've gotten, you may not be able to get it. Why? Because of, one, your investor operators who's doing the flips are now competing with institutional funds like a hedge fund. And on top of that, they're looking to keep their same margins. And if they're looking to keep the same margins, they're going to find ways to cut expenses. And if the financing side is not follow suit, as they say, then you're going to most likely have more capital on the sideline than you can go ahead and invest in real estate. So understand this global change, what's going on. But now let's go ahead and talk about the basic stuff. And what I'm going to cover are the common ways to structure your private money deals. And as I kind of explained earlier in the presentation, I always like to teach from the ground level, right? Give you the basics. And what I'm going to cover is the common ways to structure your private money deals and how we're doing it in our business and the way that we used to do it and why we're no longer doing it. And on top of that, we'll cover a couple of case studies on what we're doing in our business and how you can get involved as well. So what are the common ways? There's three ways, in my opinion, or three forms of capital that you can tap into. Number one is bank financing. Right? Well, what is bank financing? Type 1 is conventional lenders like Fannie, Freddie, right? The good old GSEs, right? Government-sponsored entities now that is owned by American tax dollars since we bailed them out back in '08. Right? And there's a limit of those. You can only have 10 mortgage properties, right? So if you're an investor operator looking to cash flow properties or use bank financing, you can get only up to 10 loans. Very strict financing guidelines and requires tons of paperwork, okay? You've got to have good credit. So if you have been affected in the actual downturn of '08 when the market crashed and you don't have good credit, then you're going to be in trouble. And on top of that, you need to require 20 to 30% down payment on that, and a note from your doctor, personality test, blood type, and you get the idea, right? It's very hard to qualify these days, especially for investors, okay? And especially if you're an investor who does this as their full-time job, meaning that your income is flipping homes, right? They like W-2 employees. If you're a W-2 employee that have a full-time job with very good income, it's much easier for you to qualify for this. But as an investor, it's going to be much more difficult. Now, what's the type 2 of bank financing? Portfolio lenders, local community banks, and credit unions, which we like because there's less restriction because loans are generally kept in-house, hence in portfolio, right? And still must qualify based on income, credit, global cash flow, and balance sheet of your company and yourself. And mostly commercial lenders, which means loans carry short-term calls of 3, 5, 10 years, or they'll reset in those time frames, right? Meaning that they will go ahead and balloon. So those are the two types when it comes to bank financing. You can use a Freddie, Fannie style, or you can use a portfolio lender. So what are the other ways out of the three ways of financing or three sources? 2 is hard money. So if you're an investor operator looking to flip, you can use hard money. So what is hard money? A hard money will typically charge you 2 to 4 points upfront or in the back end, and 8 to 12% interest rates, right? And it must have an assured exit strategy and a very solid deal before taking on hard money, meaning that hard money lenders only take on great deals, and terms and rate vary on experience and risk, and experience will go very, 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 very deep, meaning that if you have proven track record with a hard money lender, that experience will allow you to go ahead and get deals and get financing much quicker than if you were to go ahead and do your first deal. And now, obviously, if you're going to build relationships with hard money lenders, I would say become very selective and start building relationship with the big boys of the hard money lenders. Why? Because they're going to give you more leverage, in my opinion, as long as they know that, hey, you can perform and they can go ahead and make special arrangements with you, okay? Now, see what these hard money lenders are offering. Why? Because I want to show you what folks are offering in this market, because things has drastically changed since '08 when hard money lenders are very conservative. In my opinion, now hard money lenders are very aggressive, and the lending side has changed even in the last 6 months to 12 months. And I want to go ahead and show you exactly what has changed and show you some of the folks that we work with locally here in Los Angeles when it comes to funding our deals. So here's one company, Polaris Equity Group, and you can see here the loan structure. They go up to loan to value of 60% based on after repaired appraisal, and up to 65% on case-by-case basis, meaning that depending on your experience and so forth. So these folks will go above your purchase price if your after repair value is significantly higher, meaning that they'll cover 60% of your after repair, including all points, rehab costs, and so forth. So if your loan amount includes your repair amount, points, closing costs, holding costs, and so forth, and it's under 60% of after repair value, essentially you got yourself a 100% funded deal. Now, obviously, you still have to make mortgage payments, so there's going to be some carrying costs on that. Right? But if you want to get a hold of these folks, here's the contact information to Polaris, the folks that we work with. Dan Lymel Jr., he's the CEO of it, and here's the address. They're out in Laguna Hills, and his phone number is 949-727-4333 with extension 4481, or you can shoot him an email at dan@polarisequitygroup.com. Let them know that we sent you Capital Redevelopment Group, so that way you can make sure that you're taken care of. But those are the folks that you can get an app and see how much they're willing to cover on a deal, right? Here's some couple other people, right, that we work with. Anchor Loans, right? They're one of the big hard money lenders here locally in Southern California, and you can see here on Anchor Loans generally do not exceed 70% of after repair value of the property secured in your loan. So they go up anywhere from 5 to 10% more higher in terms of after repair value. So it can potentially mean less money out of your pocket or skin in the game, meaning that you get a very high debt leverage, right? Which is a good thing for investor operators. Why? Because flipping houses or rehabbing is a very labor-intensive business and also a cash-heavy business, meaning that you have to have a lot of cash on your sideline to be able to grow your business, right? So, but if you want to go ahead and get hold of Anchor Loans, get hold of Robert Fragoso. He's the executive VP or vice president there, and they're out in Cerritos, and you can call him at 310-395-0010 and ask for Robert, or shoot him an email at robertf@anchorloans.com, or you can ask for Rick Perez. Rick Perez is a gentleman I love doing business with, and you can speak with him, and he can help you out also. So give him a call. Like I said, tell him that we sent you, so that way you can make sure that you're being taken care of, right? So this particular lender goes up to 70%. Now, here's another one, right? Aztec Financial. They are another, old hard money lender company out here in Los Angeles. And you can see here on their website, they say we may lend up to 100% of purchase price plus 100% of the cost of repairs, subject to appraisal, any type of residential commercial property. And I can vouch for Aztec, that they have funded 100% of our deals in the past, and they're very easy to work with, and one of my favorites. Why? Because they're actually out in Burbank, which is very close to our location, headquarters of Hollywood. So if you want to get hold of them, you can get hold of Joel Hoffman, who is the actual CEO and owner, or you can go ahead and call him at 818-848-8960 and ask for our guy that we work with, who is Efren. So contact Efren and be like, hey, you know what, Capital Redevelopment Group sent you, and have them essentially see how much they can lend you on your next deal, right? Now, here's another one, right? This is just an email that I just literally got a few minutes ago, and look at here, right? These folks goes up to 75% of after repair value, meaning that it's additional 5% more than Anchor Loans, or more than 5 to 10%, or even 15% of the other guys that I just mentioned. Now, why is that significant when it comes to capital outlay as an investor operator looking to grow their business? Is that if you have a delta of 10% difference, meaning that let's just say you're acquiring properties at $200,000 and your average aggregate loan amount is $200,000, that 10% equates to about $40,000, right? Am I doing? No, I'm sorry. That would equate to $40,000. No, I did the math wrong on that. I'm sorry. It equates to $20,000 a cash outlay. Now, obviously, if your price point, the median price point is at $400,000, like most of our acquisition price, then that $20,000 is now $40,000. So imagine if you have 4 deals that you're working on right now on rehabbing. That means that you have to have an aggregate cash position, or liquid cash is $400,000 that you need to have in equity position in your deals, meaning that you have to at least bring to the closing table to close on those deals and to operate. And that $400,000, right? Well, what I'm doing is 40,000 times 10, which is $400,000. That does not include new deals that you're tying up, right? Because as competition heats up, you need to go ahead and put bigger EMDs, right? We're putting EMDs of $10,000 sometimes, even $20,000 and so forth, just so we can get the deal. So if you have, 10 different escrows open at $10,000, that's another $100,000 that you have open in cash outlay that you have. So total aggregate at that time is $500,000, $500,000, right? So you can see that it's a cash heavy business. So if you're an investor operator, you're constantly looking for ways to leverage your dollars so that way you have the least amount of capital out, right? And on top of that, that's very interesting about this email that I got just recently is this. It says, I'm looking to earn your business back. We just raised some international capital, and I think you'll love this program. See below. So as I stated earlier in this presentation is that international investors are coming into California, coming into your local market. This is a prime example of a hard money lender stating that he just raised capital from international people, and because of that, my gut tells me their after repaired or total loan to value, CLTV, they can go up to 75% of after repaired value, right? So hard money lenders, right? Stay competitive, know what's going on, and focus on leverage much as you can without becoming over leveraged, as they say. So now the third thing when it comes to capital is private money, which we love the most. So what is private money? Borrowing from individuals. Obviously, it can be from LLC that an individual owns, but typically from individuals, and very few regulations. Right? It's more on the how you solicit, not in terms of how we borrow the money, but it's more on how you solicit for private capital. That's always been regulated, right? Now, as I stated, with crowdfunding coming into play, it's going to become that much more easier to raise capital from investors. And on top of that, document requires are totally up to the lenders and usually the title company. And they're flexible terms and can fund as fast as the private money investor can move, or how fast that they can go ahead and wire. And terms and rates are totally up to the private money investor, meaning that hedge funds and hard money folks, right, has a certain yield that they have to hit. So if they have to hit a certain yield, they have to charge you, the actual investor operators who's doing the flip, more than what they're borrowing for, so that way they can make a spread on the interest rate, right, what they're charging in the points and so forth, so that way they can stay profitable. But when it comes to private money, since you are not paying a fund, you don't have underlying yields that you need to hit. Yes, obviously private individuals are going to have yields that they want to hit, returns that they want to get, but it's going to be up to the private money investor, right? So in a typical private money transaction, you, the borrower or the investor operator, receives a loan for X from the private lender in exchange for a monthly interest payment based on X. Now that interest payment can be rolled into the back end to be paid all up in the back end side, or it can be paid as monthly cash flow to you as the private investor. And a deed of trust or a mortgage on the property will be recorded against the property depending on your state. California is a deed of trust state, so if you were to do deals with us, we record what they call a deed of trust against the property, and we'll go ahead and give you a promissory note for the amount of the loan and promising to repay the loan after the agreed terms. So that's what we have. Now, the big idea as a private lender investor is you decide what terms and rate fits your risk tolerance level, that fits your financial goals and timeline, right? Why? Because it's your investment. It's your capital. You worked hard for it. So you make the rules. It's your capital, right? So now, in the most typical private money transaction where an investor rehabs and flips a house, the lender funds either all or most of the purchase and renovation. And the goal is to find deals so cheap in relation to the after repair that the lender is protected. And in our company, never go over 80% of after repaired value, including points, interest fees, closing costs, rehab costs, holding costs, and etc. Now, in that 80%, we're going to also include the monthly payment as well. And we want to make sure that we stay under the 80% threshold of after repaired value. Why? Because you want to have an equity position for your private money capital investors for protection, right? Because if you have no equity position whatsoever, or you have less than 20%, then you're going to put your private money investor in a position where their funds are going to be at a higher risk, right? So always remember that you need to go ahead and protect your private capital investor and never go over the 80%. Now, but oftentimes a private lender investor will say things like may not have, they may not be comfortable with that much risk and require you to put a skin into the game, a little or a lot. And why? Because they're risk averse, right? They want to make sure that you have some risk on there also, and may not be happy with the interest rate you're offering and want a higher return, or they have a higher risk appetite, right? So those are the two things that's going to happen with private capital investors. Either one, they're going to say, okay, it seems like a little bit too much risk for me, or they're going to want a higher return, right? Now, for me, the return to your private lender gets typically or should be commensurate with the risk that they take on, right? Because obviously if they're taking on higher risk or a higher probability of a risk or perceived risk, as I like to call it, then you should compensate them for a higher return versus a low risk, low return, right? So that whole thing, low risk, low return, high risk, high return, right? So what can you do? Well, first off, you need to understand the risk tolerance level of your investors. Here's a quick diagram, right, for operator investors, right, and for private money lender investors, and in the middle is essentially your risk tolerance blend, because each investor, regardless if you're an operator investor, meaning you're doing the flip yourself, or you're a private money lender investor who's just lending out capital, that blend of risk tolerance needs to be blended, and that middle ground is the actual place where you're going to agree in terms of the return rate and what makes sense for both parties. So on this diagram for operator investors, what is it? It's capital growth, right? Operator investors are looking for capital growth. They're looking for the highest ROI, max leverage, control, most profits, flexibility, the cost, and the speed of decision. Those are the key points for operator investors when it comes to looking for private money capital. Why? Because they're looking for capital growth. They're trying to grow their business. They're looking for the highest ROI, just like any investor, regardless if they're a private money lender investor or an operator investor. They want to have control. Why? Because more control that you have, the higher success rate of being a successful deal. They're looking for most profits, flexibility, and cost. And the big one is speed of decision. We want to work with private money lender investors that can make decisions very quickly. Why? Because deals are made and deals are lost in matter of minutes and hours, especially in this market now as things have become more competitive. Things that need to move quicker needs to move faster than ever before, and funding is one part of it, right? So for private money investors, what are their concerns? Capital preservation, right? You worked hard for your dollars. You built that little nest egg. You're trying to preserve your capital. You're obviously looking for highest ROI, highest leverage. You're looking for max leverage. You want to have control. You're looking for most profits, flexibility. And also the big key part is you're looking for operator experience, right? So if you're lending capital, the soldiers that you've built, right? The dollars that you've built over the course of the years or so, you want to make sure that they're protected, right? Capital preservation is number one, and then also number two is going to be operator experience. So when you're entrusting an operator like us or other operator investors who's doing the flipping business, you want to make sure that your dollars are safe. And for it to be safe, you really have to look in the experience level of an investor, okay? So that's a quick diagram. And now here's a nifty little chart that I made, which is what I like to call the risk versus return chart, and what you need to pay attention to. And obviously the low LTV or low debt that you're going to have, lower the amount, you're going to have a lower return, right? And obviously as the interest or potential return increases, as you can see on the chart, then it may change. You might have a higher loan to value. You might do some type of equity debt split, or you might do an equity deal with them. Now, if you don't know what all of that equity and debt means, debt in terms of finances means that you're taking out a loan. Equity means that you actually have a position of a profit share, let's just say, of the flip. So that's the easy way for me to explain it. Now, what to consider? Loan to value, very important, right? Obviously, clearly, higher loan to loan to value can mean potentially higher risk, not always, but also at the same time, it can also equate to potential higher return as well. Now, obviously, the experience is very important because you need to consider the experience level of the operator investors, because an operator investor who only flips one house every quarter or something like that is going to pay most likely probably a lot higher interest rate versus a seasoned flipping business that's been around for 1, 2, 3 years like us. Why? Because we have a team, a bigger team that we have to pay out on. So if we have to pay out on folks that are on the team, we need to make sure that the investors' capital can get paid also, and also that we can stay profitable as well. So typically with seasoned investors, you're going to pay a little bit less than your mom and pop investor that's doing 1 or 2 deals a quarter. But obviously, with a seasoned company, your funds should be essentially more secure or more protected. Why? Because they've done more flips and they have more experience, right? And also the big one is direction of the company, in my opinion, because this window of opportunity to capitalize on this historic lows of this real estate market, this window of opportunity is closing, and it's closing very quickly. So the direction of the company is very important, because if you have only deals and the operators aren't looking to expand or grow their business, and you have, a couple of $100,000 or even several $1 million on the sideline, then the operator investor may only be able to go ahead and lend, use only $100,000, $200,000 worth of your capital versus a company that's looking to expand and do bigger deals and so forth, right? So I hope that makes sense. Now let's go over the 4 common ways to structure your private capital. As I stated, the first most common way is low LTV debt, right? Lenders fund 50% of both acquisition and rehab, or the lenders fund acquisition and no rehab. So those are the low LTVs, meaning that you have to bring a significant amount of capital to the closing table for you to be able to borrow from private investors like that. Now, as I stated, hard money lenders are becoming very aggressive. You saw one that's 75% of after repaired value. So if you're a private capital investor and you're saying, hey, I only want a debt position of 50%, well, don't expect to make that same type of return as a hard money lender when the hard money lender is lending out more capital. So as you can see, your return is going to be significantly lower. Now, higher LTV debt, right? The hard money lenders are, obviously plus 60%, 65, and 75% on some. So keep that in mind. And lenders fund everything with a straight interest, or lenders fund everything with rolling in closing costs and holding costs. And this is your highest loan to value debt. And this is typically our method of working with private investors, where we'll go ahead and have one investor on one property and have them fund 100% of the actual transaction, and we'll pay them typically close to what we're paying hard money lenders. Why? Because in our case, we want to go ahead and build relationship with private investors. Why? Because we're looking to expand our company, expand our business, and we're going to run across other deals that a hard money lender may not lend on, and we want to have the flexibility from the private capital investors to be able to get into those deals later on in this real estate cycle as the market shifts again. So the other way is debt and equity, right? Lenders fund everything with the interest and profit split. Debt and equity, which is smaller profit. We do some equity deals. We don't do too much equity splits, meaning that we don't do like 50-50 split on equity deals. Why? Because there's too much work involved for our side to find a deal, especially with the competition that's heating up. And on top of that, we do have a significant amount of folks that are on payroll that we need to pay out, so we need to stay profitable. Now, I'm not saying that if you have capital on the sideline, are you going to be able to get profit share? Yeah, you could probably get profit shares from other rehabbers, but keep in mind that those rehabbers may be brand new and they're just starting, or they have a smaller operation. So if you have a war chest of capital that you need to go ahead and get returns on, you may not be able to do that, especially if that operator investor is only buying one house every quarter, right? So debt and equity, keep that in mind. Probably the best bet to do that with ours is what we do is we give a pref rate on the hard cost for the debt. If a private investor is leveraging debt, we'll go ahead and do a pref rate on that. So that way that's a delta wash, meaning that we'll pay for the actual debt on what it's costing them, and then we'll split equity from there, right? So now the other way to do this is 100% equity. I know some investors in my local area that does this. That makes sense for them. Why? Because they look at the actual transaction itself as 4 phases, right? If of the business, meaning that phase 1 is finding the deal, right? Phase 2 is finding the capital for the deal. Phase 3 is the actual construction, and phase 4 is disposition, right? Getting it and actually realizing the profits. So they look at the capital being one out of the 4 aspects. So if someone wants to fund 100% of the deal, I've seen other investors actually split that into quarters, right? Which kind of makes sense. For some, it may not. But it does, as I stated, for private money capital investors, it's totally up to the investors themselves to have that conversation with the actual investor operators to negotiate that. Because why? Because real estate, it's everything is negotiable. So those are the 4 common ways to structure private capital. Now, what do we do in our business? And this is how you can get involved with us. What we do with our business is when we start to negotiate to acquire property, we have a database of private capital investors who has funds on the sideline that are looking to invest in real estate. And if what we do is once we have a property under contract and something that we want to move forward with, we'll send out what we call a lender opportunity package that requests the funding for the deal, including the comps and all the deal's details. And once you receive that package, you're going to be able to analyze it and say, okay, yeah, you know what, this one kind of makes sense. This is my cup of tea. This is what I want to do. And essentially from there, it goes into step 3, which is the letter of commitment that you will send to us stating that, hey, you can fund the deal. And then from there, it goes into step 4 or the finish, where we'll go ahead and get hold of the closing agent, prepare the doc set, lender approves the certified funds to the closing agent, wires it in, and all documents are signed and transaction is complete. So that's essentially the cycle of our business. When we have a deal, we send it out to our private capital investors. Now, let me show you quickly on what our lender opportunity packet looks like, so that way you can get a good feel of what it's all about. Here's one right now called Project Delmar that we're working on. As you can see here, this is the front cover, and you can see here's the headline: "What an opportunity to bring back to life this 2,200 square feet Mediterranean revival located in the coveted Caltech neighborhood in Pasadena. We are currently restoring its old charm and adding today's contemporary modern design. This project will be one of those deals you'll simply fall in love with. Invest and watch this transformation of turning this home back to elegance." So you can see here, this one we already started construction on. As you can see, this one already been brown coated on there, or clear coated, I'm sorry. And our packet will break down the overview on it, right? The project description, right? It gives you that, the work required, and on top of that, we'll give you the purchase, rehab, and the assumptions on here, right? What we're doing, how much the rehab cost is. As you can see, $160,000 that we're putting into this project already, and the total aggregate. This is a total aggregate of all the costs and all the hard costs. We're at 73%. Remember that magical number that I said, 80%? This one's 73%, right? And here's some pictures of it, right? And here's the actual request that we sent over to our investors. You can see this one is for gap funding or mezzanine financing that we're requesting. And as you can see here, we're requesting $97,406.69 in a time frame of 5 months. And projected resale low price is $985 all the way to projected high is $1.1 million. So as you can see here, for our calculation, we use $985, which is on the lower end. Why? Because we always like to stay conservative on our numbers, because obviously if you get a higher one, you know, awesome, but you want to stay conservative. And this breaks down the actual investment opportunity. And this one says CRG has purchased the property in 8/23/2012. Project has already started construction. We are in phase 3 of construction with demo framing, electrical, plumbing, drywall, AC installed. We're looking for gap investor financing of $977. Term is 5 months. For, in this case, we're paying out 12 points at $11,000, secured by a second deed of trust and promissory notes. So when you look at the actual return wise, cash on cash is 12, and if you look at an annualized return of 28%. So our investors that will actually invest on these particular deals has been folks that may have been in the past flipping themselves, but you know, it's become more difficult for them to find deals, or they rather entrust folks like us to do the deals. And obviously, in the annualized return wise, they're almost at 30%. So that's probably much closer to what they were doing if they were to go ahead and do their flips themselves, right? So this is kind of the actual packet, and here's the comparable report, right? We actually put the comps in here with pictures and so forth. And here's more pictures of the actual deal in itself. You can see here the front view inside, right? We did the roof, new fencing, everything else. And this is what we send out to our private capital investors. So if you're interested in any of our particular things that we went over today on this particular webinar, there should be a link that pops up somewhere on the screen or at the end of the webinar where you can go ahead and put your name and your email address, so that way we can go ahead and put you as one of the interested parties in our projects that we have. So take a look there, and we're coming to an end, okay, of this particular webinar. I know we covered so many things, but here is our question answer phase, because we've seen since this long webinar a lot of question has been coming in, so I'm going to try to answer all of your question at this moment. So if you had any questions whatsoever, feel free to type them in right now, so that way we can get them all answered. So type them in now. All right, so we're getting a lot of questions from folks right now, and one of the questions I'm reading right here is stating that, Jeff, I saw that. What are some of the actual hedge funds that are entering into the Los Angeles? Can you give me some examples? Now, I don't like to give out names. Why? Because it's going to dramatically impact our business if we were to go ahead and give out the names of the hedge funds. But I will go ahead and give it out since, if you just Google hedge funds, you can easily find the company's name. Colony Capital is one, has entered into our local market. They're actually start off in Santa Monica, and the owners are in Santa Monica also, but they've been buying properties out in Atlanta, Phoenix, and I believe Memphis or so forth. But now they have moved over into Los Angeles County. Previously to this, I believe they were out in Riverside, San Bernardino buying up properties, but now they're moving over to the Los Angeles County that I've actually seen them make an offer on our wholesale deal. So obviously you can sell to them if you like and so forth. Or the easiest bet maybe is if you're looking to wholesale and you have a deal, just email us at deals@getcrgnow.com, and we can do a co-wholesaling and we can sell it for you, and we can split profits that way. So that's one way that you can get involved. So I hope I answered your question. Here's another question that I have. What type of list did I go after on the actual foreclosure list? Well, the one that we go after, and I'll openly say why, because it's a changing market, and some of the strategies that we've been using in the last year has not been as effective, but also at the same time, I like to give good value, so I'll answer that question. The list that we went after on that case study that we originally showed on how we acquired that property was a foreclosure list that we went after. It was a foreclosure. We're in the state of California, Southern California. When a homeowner falls behind on their mortgage payment 3, 6, 9 months, the bank has the right to go ahead and file a document called the notice of default against the property. Now, once a notice of default gets filed against the property, it becomes public information. So we have a source that we go ahead and pull the data from, and we send out these postcards to folks that are in foreclosure and with equity, meaning that they have an equity position of at least 25%. From what we like to call the AVM model, or the automated valuation model, right? The model that the big banks use, or what Zillow uses, taking the local area and the square footage and chopping it up by the actual subject property, and then boom, X, you have a value, quote unquote. So we use that value, and as long as you have 75% equity position from that AVM, we're sending them a postcard. So we went after those folks, and the deal that we got from that case study that you just saw and the inbound call that my acquisition team took was based strictly on that lead. So you can pull that from your local title guys, or
we'll go ahead and give you a overview of the shortened version of this webinar with transcript on it. I'll kind of give you a resource page. How about that? That's showing you exactly where we got it. So that's one way. Now here's another question. It's kind of, oh man, we're getting so much questions right now. So just keep on typing in your question. We'll get them all answered. Yeah, so here's another question. Is stating that, oh no, I guess it's a statement. You know, I guess this person is in Phoenix, and he's saying the same thing. Hey, Jeff, thanks for the webinar. I see the big hedge funds entering into Phoenix also, and it has made my life much more difficult, and my income has been cut 50% on it. But luckily enough, he says that he's doing heavy construction now, so finally he's doing less deals, but almost making the same money as he did 2 years ago. So I think he wrote a long sentence, so I kind of paraphrased it there. So that's awesome. So if you made those shifts in your business, that's perfect. Okay. Okay, here's a question on the construction. He says, what is the typical time frame of getting a building permits out? Well, it's going to really depend on your building and safety, right? And there's two ways to do this, and it might be different in other parts of the country, but I'm talking from experience from Los Angeles. There's two ways to go ahead and get permits. One is called over-the-counter, or the second one is called the regular submission channel. Now, over-the-counter, just like the word over-the-counter, when you get drugs, right? I'm not talking about drugs, but prescription drugs from pharmacies. When you get an over-the-counter drug, it's just you just have a slip and you go and boom, you can get the drugs very easily. So it's the same way when it comes to over-the-counter permits, as long as you have your structural calculation on your plans and everything else, you can literally get it approved by building and safety in a matter of days versus weeks or months if it's over the counter. So obviously over the counter means that there needs to be less construction work. So that's why we try to keep our additions on a very boxy way, so that way it comes out easily, right? And obviously other cities, it's going to take much longer. What I've noticed is incorporated cities, meaning smaller cities, will take much longer for them to approve permits for some odd reason. I don't know why. We always get a boiler plate type of response, which is, well, our typical submission page is 4 to 6 weeks. So we have up to 6 weeks to go ahead and review your plans or something of that nature, right? So expect that. Expect that it's going to take that long. I would say even expected that it might take 1 or 2 months. So what I would highly recommend for you to do is calculate that in your construction costs, calculate that in your holding costs, and calculate it so that way you know that, hey, you know what, if you are going to do heavy construction, at least you even let your investors know, who's your investor operator, on the type of deal that they're doing, and hey, it might take. Because, you know, realistically, to turn your capital 6 months, you know, every 6 months has become increasingly more difficult, and I don't see too many investors doing that. All right, here's an interesting question. How many times do you turn your capital? Well, as I stated, for us, we're doing it maybe in a 6 to 9 month time frame. Okay, I haven't looked at the last report on that, so I don't have the exact number, but it's becoming increasingly more difficult. Previously, we were able to do every 6 months, we were turning investors' capital, meaning that we were able to do it twice a year, turning it. Sometimes we're doing it, you know, two and a half times a year, meaning that with investors' capital, we can flip them multiple times. So our investors are getting paid 3 times in a year. But it's becoming increasingly more difficult. Why? Because the heightened competition and more capital being readily available and so forth. And so it's becoming more difficult. So just expect that. If, in my opinion, if someone is telling you that they're turning their capital 4 times in a year, I think they're full of it. You know, especially if they're in Los Angeles. And if they're doing that, I would love to talk to them, and I would love to go ahead and give them hundreds of thousands of dollars so that way they can show me how they're doing it, because I don't see how mathematically they're doing it in Los Angeles. They're turning it 4 times. So, all right. So the next question is if you would. Okay, now here it is. If you would like to get involved on some of the deals that we have, as I stated, there should be a link somewhere on the screen where you can go ahead and fill out a form so that we can get more information on our investment opportunities that we have. So go ahead and click on that button. That's probably the best bet. So that way we can go ahead and break that down to you. Now, more questions are coming in. Okay, there's a question on crowdfunding. Okay, it's a very technical question, but they actually said, please be more detailed on how crowdfunding is going to affect the real estate market. You know, I can be detailed as possible, but all I can say is this, is that just imagine the pool of investors that previously, when you were raising capital, you had to go through specific channels to raise capital, and there was a specific way to raise capital because of SEC regulation. Now with crowdfunding, the door is wide open. You can essentially create a placement, a private placement up to $1 million without following these types of filings that we had to do before when it comes to raising capital. So that's going to be out the window. So crowdfunding is really was created for online businesses, right? Meaning that folks that will post a job on a website and look for funders that will go ahead and fund it, and they'll go ahead and pull in multiple investors' money to fund that particular project. And that's what crowdfunding is all about. But what I'm saying is it's going to impact your real estate investors, because right now, I'll say it again, is I'm actually testing it out with a company right now called Go Big Network. That actually is kind of have like a crowdfunding platform, not really in a sense of a real crowdfunding platform, but it allows you to post projects of rehab projects, and we've been posting on there to test the market to see if the market will go ahead and even invest. And we've gotten very, very high responses from other investors that are actually accustomed to investing in deals like that. That's why I see the trends, and those are the changes that I see. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Okay, so this one's more very specific. What type of returns do you pay your investors? Well, it really depends. It depends on where we're at in the construction phase, and it depends what type of transaction it is, right? If it's obviously a heavier construction and we're just going to buy the property and it's from the get-go, the acquisition price, and you're going to fund 100% of this, then we're going to pay a lot higher in terms of point-wise and maybe interest and point-wise, so that way we can give you a solid return, but also at the same time, since you're taking on quote-unquote a higher risk, right? Because you're essentially covering 100% of the acquisition, 100% of the rehab costs and so forth, so we're going to pay that out. Obviously, if we buy it with our own capital, right, and we're already 50% of construction is completed and we're raising it, the capital to get liquidity back in our company, then we're going to pay out probably less. Why? Because there really isn't any risk, right? We've done cases where we buy properties and we own it outright with all cash, and it's an easy cookie cutter deal, and we're not going to do a refi cash out with a private investor until we're done with construction 100%. Right? So that way we can roll our funds into a new project. So it really depends. Now, if you want specific points, because I see you asking me what the specific points are, well, they can range from anywhere from 2 points at 8% up to 4 points at 12%, up to gap funders getting anywhere from 1 point a month all the way up to 3 points a month. So it really depends. So as I stated, if you're interested, let's get on the phone. I can go ahead and explain that to you. So just go ahead and click on that link on the screen and you'll be able to get more information that way. How can you get involved? You're a real estate agent and you want to bring us deals? Oh, perfect. If you want to bring us deals, with all means, just email it to us at deals@getcrgnow.com, so that way our acquisition team can go ahead and run the numbers on it and see if it makes sense for us. Obviously, more information you give us, the better we can get back to you. There is typically about a 24 to 48 hour time frame that we will require you to give us, since we do review a lot of deals. So at least give us that time frame. All right. Okay, here's an interesting one. What guarantees do you have as an investor operator that my funds will be safe if I were to invest with your company? Well, first off, I can't give you any guarantees. Why? Because it's an investment at the end of the day. So there is no guarantees. And anyone, in my opinion, that gives you a guarantee on type of return that you can get or guarantees that your money is going to be safe, in my opinion, is full of it, right? Because you don't know what can happen, right? So it is the market, and you don't know what can happen. But what we do is, and what I can guarantee you on, is we do have certain procedures in place to go ahead and minimize risk, certain strategies that we've implemented so that way our capital investors are protected. One of the biggest way is we understand market conditions. We understand what's going on. We know how to buy right. Our construction team is very good. We have a project manager on payroll that we pay that specializes in construction, and we have total of 4 crews that we rotate. So we have a pretty big solid team when it comes to construction, and our track record speaks for itself. And on top of that, we protect your interest by obviously having you as a loss payee on our blanket flipping policy that we have, the fire policy that we have. So that way you are protected. We have a million liability policy and a $2 million aggregate liability policy on that, so at least you're protected there. And for fire insurance and with the replacement cost, and when it comes to fire policy, our replacement cost is based on our future flip out value, not on our acquisition, which is another thing that you need to focus on also. And then on top of that, we give our investors a back office login, meaning that we give them a login to see what stages and what pictures of their basically, let me rephrase, what stages that it's going on in the construction, meaning every week we'll go ahead and show you pictures on what's happening with the project, and so that way you can log in and see what's going on. So a lot of our investors that we've worked with, the capital investors that we work with, they really love that function about our company and what we do. Why? Because we actually really show you what's going on, and you get to really get engaged and see what's happening within the actual transaction itself, and watch the property come to life, essentially from ugly to pretty. And on top of that, that allows some of the investors who used to do flips on their own, were doing some flips, but now they can go ahead and do flips without actually doing it themselves. Why? Because they're getting engaged on what's happening with the deals and so forth. So it's a way that we can go ahead and give more control over to the actual investors or private capital investors. Mm-hmm. Now, same gentleman asked again, you're not answering my question, the guarantee portion. Well, I understand that, the guarantee, there is none, because something can happen where we go to war or something, and boom, instantaneously everything is lost, right? But what we do also is, because we believe in it, our company will guarantee it, but also we personally guarantee it as operators, the principals of the company, that we're going to pay back the debt. So that's one thing that we do with our private investors, because we believe in it, and also because of that, we'll go ahead and personally guarantee it also. Now, the big thing is this, is that at the end of the day, it is an investment. So, the debt in itself is going to be repaid one way or another, but also at the same time, it's for you to be able to leverage your capital and be able to go ahead and have security. And it all comes into negotiation with us in terms of what we feel comfortable with you, because obviously if you have never done a funding with us, we may end up, paying you maybe extra few points here and there just to start building a relationship with you, so you can see how we operate. And then from there, we may scale down your returns, as we've done with a lot of our investors once they see how we operate, because you can see that, hey, you know what, it is a means of getting returns on your capital. So I hope that answered your question. All right, so here's another one. Again, just go directly to the webpage that's on there, either on the screen or on the link somewhere on here, where it actually explains to you more in detail what private money investing is all about. We do actually have a special report that we created that actually breaks down what private capital investing, private money lending is all about. That actually breaks down the basics and actually some advanced stuff that you need to know if you're going to be lending out capital. Things like the usury law and so forth, right? You want to make sure that you're not violating, becoming a broker if you're trying to broker capital and things like that. So those are some ways that you need to protect yourself, so that way you're doing a legitimate business, doing it the right way, so that way you don't have a big brother coming knocking on your doors, as they say. So, all right. Okay, how many projects do you have currently working right now? We have a total of 11 projects we have going on in different phases of construction right now in our business that we're doing. And here we go. They asked again, how many wholesale deals do you do a month? We do anywhere from 3 to 5 in any given month. So we've actually scaled that down as we've raised more capital. We've been buying more properties instead of wholesaling them. And on top of that, I just explained to you what's been going on with the market. So it's been becoming increasingly more difficult to wholesale properties. So, it's just one of those things where, yeah, wholesaling is nice for cash flow purposes, but also rehabbing is our core business and our core bloodline. And one question, do you recommend us to buy rental properties and use a company like that will go ahead and... Not quite sure what they're saying. Okay, but I think what they're asking is, would you recommend buying rental properties at this moment and single-family homes as long as the management company is good, just like Warren Buffett said, right? I would recommend it, absolutely. I wouldn't say no to it, but also at the same time, just keep in mind that, what type of yield are you getting, right? Because as an investor, you always have to look at the type of return that you're getting. Because if the yield that you're getting is 6 to 8%, and this window of opportunity when it comes to this historic lows is only maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 years tops that's left, right? How many properties can you really acquire in 2, 3, 4 years? Versus if you can go ahead and compound and grow your capital much quicker because you're getting a yield of an annual return of 12 to 20% plus, then that means that you're going to be able to double or triple your capital during that 2, 3, 4 years much quicker versus having rental portfolios, right? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you're not going to have other benefits on that, because if you have a rental portfolio, you're going to have depreciation credit, you're building equity position, so forth, and you can obviously leverage out of that with your equity positions to do more flips or to lend out capital and so forth. So, it depends on the actual investor, and that's what I always boil down to. It depends on your risk tolerance level as an investor. How involved do you want to get, and do you want to work with a company that's outside of California, or do you want to work with someone locally here in Los Angeles? So it's totally up to you. So, where are we located? Oh, we're located in Hollywood, California, right now. Mm-hmm. All right. So we see more questions coming in, but I know that this webinar has been going on for quite a while now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut it down. So that way, if you have more questions or more information you need, feel free to get a hold of us. Here's the office line. Shoot us an email, okay? Or better yet, I will try to go ahead and answer all of your questions after this. So you'll probably receive an email from me afterwards. But if you have a question, feel free to contact me directly. And as I stated, if you are interested in working with us, there should have been a link somewhere on this webpage or this webinar that popped up, so that way you can get involved and find out what we can do. But appreciate it that you listened in. I know you could have been doing something else, but you're listening into this important training call. So thank you so much. And till next time, this is Jeff Koga with Capital Redevelopment Group, and I shall see you on our next training call. Take care and bye-bye.